Good evening and welcome back to Haunted Tales. Tonight, the highway ahead is more than just asphalt and painted lines. It's a path through the unknown, where travelers have stumbled upon encounters they can never forget. Across America, late-night drivers have seen things that defy explanation. Pale figures waiting by the roadside, phantom cars that vanish without a trace, and voices that echo from places where no living soul should be. These stories come from real people. Everyday travelers who set out with nothing more than a full tank of gas and a sense of adventure, only to find themselves face to face with something that chilled them to their core. Some experiences are tied to tragic histories, others to legends passed down for generations. But all share one thing: a lingering presence that refuses to be forgotten. If you're drawn to true horror and the shadows just beyond the headlights, make sure you subscribe to Haunted Tales and click the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a night when we journey together into the strange, the terrifying, and the unexplained. So buckle up, because tonight we're traveling the most haunted highways in America. Highway 666, the Devil's Highway. The desert at night has a silence unlike anywhere else. The wind sweeps over endless sand and rock, rattling dry brush against guardrails, and the stars stretch across the black sky like a million cold eyes. Cutting through this emptiness is an infamous stretch of road once known as U.S. Highway 666, a highway that earned a reputation so sinister, it was eventually renamed by officials desperate to shake the fear it carried. The number alone, 666, immediately sparked superstition. Local pastors referred to it as Satan's Route, and drivers whispered stories of cursed vehicles, phantom hitchhikers, and accidents that defied explanation. This road snakes through New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado, cutting across remote deserts, Navajo lands, and lonely mountain ranges. In the mid-20th century, it became a vital corridor for truckers and long-haul travelers. But it also became the setting for some of the most disturbing and unexplained accounts ever recorded on American highways. From its creation in 1926, Highway 666 was plagued by tragedy. Statistics showed it had a higher rate of fatal accidents than any surrounding roadways, despite being relatively straightforward in design. Locals began to attribute these wrecks to something beyond poor driving. Some spoke of Satan's sedan, a phantom black car that would appear in rearview mirrors, headlights blazing. Drivers said it would roar up behind them, tailgate dangerously close, and then vanish without a trace. Others mentioned a ghostly semi-truck engulfed in flames, barreling head-on toward oncoming traffic before dissipating into smoke. On Navajo reservations, elders warned of skinwalkers, shapeshifters who stalked travelers along desolate stretches. And roadside memorials piled higher year after year, marking where families, hitchhikers, and truckers had perished. By the 1990s, fear was so ingrained that petitions began circulating to change the highway's name. But a new set of numbers couldn't erase what countless drivers had already seen. One of the most chilling stories comes from a trucker named Don Haskins, who drove freight through Arizona in the late 1980s. He recounted his experience in an interview years later, voice trembling as though the memory still clung to him. It was around 2 in the morning, somewhere near Gallup. I'd been on the road for hours, not a soul in sight. Then, up ahead, I see her. A woman standing on the shoulder, dressed in white. Looked like a young girl, maybe early 20s. She didn't wave me down, didn't move at all. Just stood there, staring straight ahead. Her skin looked pale as chalk in the headlights. Don said he slowed instinctively. The desert night is no place for a stranded woman to be walking alone. He rolled down the passenger window and shouted, "You need help?" The woman slowly turned her head toward him. Her face, he recalled, was blank, expressionless, almost doll-like. Before he could pull over, she simply wasn't there anymore. The headlights swept the shoulder, the rear view showed nothing. Just the whisper of the desert wind. Shaken, Don drove on. But 20 miles later, on a curve lined with jagged cliffs, she appeared again. This time in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes so hard I thought I'd jackknife the rig. But when the truck stopped, there was nothing. No woman, no body, nothing. Just silence. That night, Don refused to drive another mile. He pulled into a rest stop, locked his doors, and slept in the cab with his engine idling. He never again accepted routes along Highway 666 after dark. Truckers. and Navajo locals alike share tales of the hounds of hell that stalk Highway 666. These creatures are described as jet black, dogs with glowing red eyes, larger than wolves, capable of keeping pace with speeding cars. Witnesses say they snarl and scratch at vehicle doors, leaving claw marks in steel. In one case from the 1970s, a couple reported being chased for miles by what they swore were 3 massive dogs. No matter how fast they drove, the beasts kept pace, their eyes shining in the rearview mirror. When the couple finally reached a gas station in Shiprock, the animals vanished into thin air. Mechanics later examined their car. The doors bore deep gouges, like something had tried to tear its way inside. Perhaps the most infamous legend tied to Highway 666 is that of the Phantom semi-truck, a monstrous vehicle engulfed in flames that barrels down the asphalt. Dozens of reports over decades describe the same horrifying vision, a roaring inferno of steel and fire charging directly toward oncoming cars. One chilling account comes from Officer Harold Jensen, a New Mexico state trooper. In 1983, he responded to what dispatch described as multiple calls of a truck on fire traveling northbound. Jensen drove out, blue lights flashing across the desert, but found no wreck, no skid marks, nothing. Later, he listened to the 911 tapes. 3 different callers miles apart all described the same thing. A big rig, lit up like it was burning alive, heading straight for me, then gone. Flames were pouring from the cab, but it made no sound. It passed right through my car. I thought I was dead. To this day, Jensen refuses to dismiss those calls as hallucinations. He's since admitted he avoids Highway 666 after dark. The Navajo Nation intersects large parts of Highway 66, and with it comes some of the darkest folklore in the American Southwest. Elders speak of skinwalkers, witches who wear the skins of animals and stalk travelers at night. Drivers have reported seeing figures running on all fours, keeping pace with cars going 60 miles an hour. Others claim to have picked up hitchhikers who, after a few miles, vanished from the seat beside them. One woman, a schoolteacher named Lena Yazzie, described an encounter while driving home one summer night in the late 90s. There was something in the road. Looked like a coyote at first, but when my headlights hit it, it stood up. Stood up like a man, but its face, it was wrong. Like half animal, half human. I screamed, swerved, nearly lost control. When I looked back, it was gone. She later told friends she believed it was a skinwalker, warning her not to travel alone at night. In 2003, state officials, bowing to decades of fear, officially renamed Highway 666 as U.S. Route 491. They hoped the new number would erase its reputation as the Devil's Highway. For a while, traffic accidents reportedly declined. But locals insist that changing a sign doesn't break a curse. Even now, truckers whisper about the black. Route 66, the haunted mother road for decades, U.S. Route 66 was more than just a road. Stretching nearly 2,500 miles from Chicago to Santa Monica, it carried soldiers, truckers, and families chasing the American dream. It became known as the Mother Road, a ribbon of asphalt linking the heartland to the Pacific. But for every story of opportunity and freedom, Route 66 also bears darker tales, accounts of phantom hitchhikers, deserted motels, and stretches of highway where travelers vanish without a trace. Today, much of the old highway lies broken and forgotten, bypassed by the interstate system. Yet on the sections that remain, especially through Arizona and Oklahoma, countless travelers still whisper of unsettling encounters that suggest Route 66 carries more than just history. It carries shadows. To understand why Route 66 is so deeply haunted, one must remember its history. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression and Dust Bowl, hundreds of thousands fled their barren farms in Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas, heading west toward California. Families piled their belongings onto trucks, leaving behind graves, homes, and dreams swallowed by dust storms. This mass migration left the highway lined with sorrow. Countless people died along the journey. Broken vehicles, starvation, disease, and roadside accidents claimed lives daily. Entire families were buried in shallow graves, just yards from the pavement. For many, Route 66 was not a road of hope, but a final resting place. Even after prosperity returned, the road carried tragedy. Bars, motels, and diners sprang up along the route, and with them came stories of murders, suicides, and inexplicable accidents. Locals began to say that the Mother Road remembers every soul that passed upon it, and some never left. One of the most enduring legends comes from Oklahoma, near the town of Weatherford. For decades, motorists have described a young man in worn clothing, thumb extended, standing on the roadside. Witnesses describe him as a Dust Bowl migrant, with sunken eyes and a flat cap. A truck driver named Sam Rogers recalled his 1952 encounter in a taped interview preserved by a local historical society. "I was hauling produce west when I saw him. Middle of the night, no other cars around. Kid couldn't have been older than 20. Looked half-starved, clothes hanging off him. I pulled over, asked where he was headed. He climbed in, didn't say much, just stared out the window." Sam said he tried making small talk, but the boy barely responded. After a few miles, Sam glanced away to adjust his radio. When he looked back, the passenger seat was empty. The door hadn't opened, the cab light hadn't flicked on. He was simply gone. Sam later stopped in Weatherford to ask locals. They told him the same story had been told for years. A migrant boy who died along Route 66 during the 1930s still tries to hitch a ride home. If Route 66 is the Mother Road, then its children were the neon-lit motels that lined its shoulders. Many are now crumbling husks, their signs flickering in the desert wind. But in Arizona, near Flagstaff, one motel carries a legend darker than broken glass and peeling paint. Travelers in the 1960s and 70s reported staying at a small roadside inn where a woman in a red dress roamed the halls at night. Guests awoke to the sound of heels clicking on tile, only to find no one in the corridor. Some said they awoke to the feeling of someone sitting on their bed, cold fingers brushing their arms. One chilling account comes from 1974, when a young couple on their honeymoon checked into the motel. The wife reported hearing whispering in the bathroom, as though two people were speaking just beyond the mirror. When her husband entered, he saw no one, but the mirror was fogged as though someone had been breathing heavily on the glass. By the 1980s, the motel had closed, its windows boarded. Yet even today, urban explorers report strange activity in the ruins. Shadows moving across rooms with no roof, whispers in the empty halls, and the smell of cheap perfume lingering in the desert air. Route 66 also carries tales of phantom vehicles. In Oklahoma City, locals long spoke of a black pickup truck that stalks drivers at night. Motorists describe being tailgated by blinding headlights, forced to swerve or speed up. Then, just when collision seems inevitable, the truck vanishes into thin air. One survivor, Carla James, shared her story in a 1999 interview. "I was driving home from visiting family, somewhere near El Reno. This truck comes out of nowhere, right on my bumper, horn blaring. I panicked, sped up to 90. Every time I glanced back, it was closer, like it was going to ram me. Then, suddenly, nothing. Just me, the road, and silence. I pulled over, shaking. My back bumper had deep dents, like something had been pressing against it, but there was no truck." Local police admitted they received numerous reports of a mysterious pickup harassing drivers through the 70s and 80s, yet no suspect was ever identified. Another eerie spot sits near St. Louis, Missouri, where the Chain of Rocks Bridge once carried Route 66 traffic across the Mississippi River. In 1991, the bridge became the site of a horrific crime. Two sisters, Julie and Robin Carey, were attacked by a group of men, forced off the bridge and drowned. Since then, travelers report hearing screams carried on the wind when standing near the abandoned span. Others swear they've seen two women, hand in hand, walking toward the center of the bridge, only to vanish. Though technically at the eastern end of Route 66, many believe the tragedy added another layer of darkness to the already haunted history of the Mother Road. In the 1950s, gas stations were lifelines for travelers on Route 66. But one attendant's story still circulates among Route 66 enthusiasts. A man named Frank Dugan, who worked nights at a station outside Kingman, Arizona, told reporters he often saw a woman with a baby walking the shoulder near his station. She'd come around 2-3 in the morning, long hair, wearing some kind of old-time dress, like from the 30s. She'd be carrying a baby wrapped in cloth. I called out once, but she didn't look at me. Just walked past into the desert. I followed her a bit, but she disappeared, like smoke blowing away. Frank said he saw her multiple times during his 10 years at the station. When he asked locals, some told him of a family that perished in a car accident nearby during the Dust Bowl migration. The mother and child were buried in unmarked graves along the highway. Today, Route 66 is a patchwork of tourist attractions and ghost towns. Some sections gleam with restored diners and neon signs, while others crumble in silence, overtaken by weeds. Yet across its length, the legends endure. Paranormal investigators, road trippers, and truckers continue to report strange figures on the roadside. Phantom vehicles and motels that feel alive long after abandonment. Clinton Road, the most haunted road in America, hidden deep within the dense forests of northern New Jersey, lies a stretch of asphalt that has terrified locals for decades. Just 10 miles long, Clinton Road winds through the wilderness outside the town of West Milford. On paper, it is an ordinary back road. In reality, it has become a place of urban legends, ghost stories, and chilling encounters that make it one of the most infamous haunted roads in the United States. At night, Clinton Road is a different world. No streetlights break the darkness, no houses line the trees, and cell reception vanishes completely. The forest seems to press in on both sides, thick and oppressive. Even locals who live nearby avoid the road after midnight. For travelers brave or foolish enough to enter, the stories are consistent. Phantom vehicles, glowing eyes in the woods, ghostly children, and the unsettling feeling of being followed. Clinton Road's history contributes to its legend. In the 1980s, it was tied to rumors of cult activity, including satanic rituals in the surrounding woods. Graffiti-covered ruins and fire pits lent credence to the stories, though police never confirmed them. In 1983, the discovery of a human body along Clinton Road deepened its reputation. Investigators linked the murder to a notorious hitman named Richard Kuklinski, known as the Iceman. But even before that crime, locals whispered of Clinton Road as a place where the natural and supernatural collide. Some say the land itself is cursed, a thin place where spirits cross over. Others believe the tragedies that occurred there, accidents, murders, and mysterious disappearances, have soaked the pavement in restless energy. The most famous legend of Clinton Road centers on a small stone bridge over a stream. Locals call it Dead Man's Curve, and many swear it is haunted by the spirit of a young boy. According to the tale, a boy drowned beneath the bridge decades ago. Ever since, his spirit lingers. Visitors are told that if they stop on the bridge at night and toss a coin into the water, the boy will return it. Some claim they've seen ripples form immediately, as though unseen hands reached up from the depths. Others insist they found the same coin placed back on the road, balanced upright on the bridge's railing. One witness, a teenager named Angela, recounted her experience in a 1992 interview with a local paper. "We were out there as a dare, 3 of us. We stopped on the bridge around midnight, dropped a quarter in. I swear less than 30 seconds later we heard a splash. Then, right in front of our headlights, the same quarter rolled onto the road. None of us touched it. We screamed and drove out of there as fast as we could." Skeptics dismiss the tale as kids scaring themselves, but even decades later, the Ghost Boy remains Clinton Road's most enduring legend. Another infamous feature of Clinton Road is the phantom truck said to stalk drivers at night. Many describe being pursued by an old pickup or black car that appears suddenly behind them, headlights blinding. The vehicle chases them for miles, hugging their bumper, only to vanish into thin air without ever passing. A trucker named Dennis Moore described his 1978 encounter. "I was heading home after a late shift. Around 2 a.m., this truck comes out of nowhere, right on my tail. I tried to speed up, it stayed with me. I slowed down, it slowed too. It was like it was playing with me. I was sweating bullets. Then just as suddenly it was gone. I pulled over shaking, but there were no taillights. No engine sound. Nothing. Just the forest and the road. To this day, locals warn new drivers, if a truck appears behind you on Clinton Road, do not stop. Clinton Road cuts through thick, unbroken forest, and many claim the trees hide more than wildlife. Over the years, hikers and motorists have reported shadowy figures moving between the trees, sometimes keeping pace with cars. Some describe them as hooded figures in robes, watching silently from the tree line. Others claim to see pale faces peering from behind trunks. In the 1970s, a group of teens reported stumbling across what they described as a circle of robed figures performing a ritual near the old iron furnace ruins. Along the road, though skeptics insist these are stories born from fear and imagination, the sheer consistency of the reports suggests something more. Even police officers have admitted privately that Clinton Road has an atmosphere unlike anywhere else in the state. One of Clinton Road's most notorious landmarks is the Cross Castle ruins, the remains of a stone mansion built in 1905. Over the decades, the castle fell into disrepair, and by the 1970s, it had become a gathering spot for local teens, occult groups, and dare-seekers. Visitors reported strange phenomena at the ruins: sudden dizziness, nausea, disembodied voices, and visions of shadowy figures. Some claimed to find animal sacrifices in the remains of fire pits, while others swore they heard chanting echoing from the forest. The ruins were partially demolished by the state in the 1980s to deter visitors, but even today, the foundation remains, hidden deep in the woods. Paranormal investigators who venture there describe Clinton Road's energy as oppressive and hostile, as though the very land resists human presence. In 1993, police investigated the disappearance of a motorist whose abandoned car was found along Clinton Road. The man, later identified as Michael Harrington, was never seen again. Witnesses reported seeing his vehicle pulled onto the shoulder, hazards blinking, around midnight. Search parties combed the surrounding forest for days. No body was ever recovered. His case remains unsolved. But locals often say that Michael became another ghost of Clinton Road. One eerie detail still unsettles investigators. Michael's car was found with the driver's side door wide open, keys still in the ignition, and his wallet untouched on the passenger seat. Whatever made him step out of the car did so in the dead of night, along one of the darkest stretches of road in America. Another common theme of Clinton Road is the presence of strange animals. Drivers often report spotting unnaturally large wolves or dogs along the shoulders. Others claim to see deer with glowing red eyes. In one chilling account, a woman described hitting what she thought was a deer. When she stopped and got out, the creature was gone, but her bumper bore deep claw marks. She drove home terrified, convinced she had encountered something not entirely of this world. Part of what makes Clinton Road so terrifying is the way it combines isolation with history. The lack of houses, the dense woods, the abandoned ruins, it all creates an environment primed for unease. Add decades of tragedy, crime, and folklore, and you have a perfect storm for ghost stories. Yet those who've driven it at night insist the fear goes beyond suggestion. The oppressive silence, the sense of being followed, and the chilling consistency of the legends suggest Clinton Road may truly be a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. Even now, teenagers dare each other to drive Clinton Road after midnight. Some throw coins off the bridge to test the ghost boy. Others race down the road hoping not to meet the phantom truck. But many who do return with the same haunted look in their eyes, claiming they saw something they cannot explain. So if you ever find yourself in New Jersey, and someone suggests a late-night drive down Clinton Road, remember the stories. Remember the boy at the bridge, the truck that won't let you escape, and the shadows moving in the woods. Because on Clinton Road, once the forest swallows the light behind you, there's no telling what might be waiting in the dark ahead. The Air Highway, the vanishing travelers of the Nullarbor. Plain Australia's Air Highway cuts across the barren stretch of the Nullarbor Plain, a name derived from the Latin words meaning no trees. It is a road that seems endless, stretching straight through one of the most desolate landscapes in the world. Travelers describe it as a place where the horizon swallows everything, where the earth feels ancient and empty, and where the night sky burns with stars so sharp they seem to pierce the void itself. But amid this stark beauty lurks something deeply unsettling. For decades, the air highway has been the site of strange disappearances, phantom encounters, and terrifying accounts from weary drivers. Police files, trucker testimony, and folklore from the Aboriginal people of the land all weave together into a chilling portrait. On the Nullarbor Plain, people vanish, and sometimes something else is seen on the road. The air highway stretches over 1,600 kilometers from Western Australia to South Australia, cutting through a flat, treeless expanse so vast it defies comprehension. Drivers face hours upon hours without a single bend in the road. Fatigue becomes a predator. Hallucinations blur the line between real and imagined. Locals call it Nullarbor madness, but the encounters described by drivers often go beyond exhaustion. They speak of phantom vehicles, vanishing travelers, and figures that appear on the roadside, figures that are never entirely human. One of the most persistent legends of the air highway is that of the vanishing hitchhiker. Truckers recount stopping for lone figures on the side of the road, usually described as young women, sometimes barefoot, sometimes wearing outdated clothing. These hitchhikers climb inside, ask for a ride to the next roadhouse, and exchange only a few words. Then, as the truck pushes on through the night, the driver glances back and realizes the seat is empty. One trucker, identified in an interview only as Graham, recalled an incident in 1991. It was around 3 a.m. I'd been driving 13 hours straight. I see this girl on the shoulder, waving her arms. I thought maybe she broke down, so I pulled over. She climbed in, didn't say much, just pointed east. I figured she wanted a lift. 20 minutes later, I checked the mirror. She's gone. Door never opened, no sound, just gone. I slammed the brakes, searched the cabin, nothing. I kept telling myself I was tired, but I can still feel the weight shift when she sat down. She was real. Stories like Graham's appear again and again, separated by years and hundreds of miles, yet eerily similar in detail. The Nullarbor is dominated by road trains, massive semi-trucks hauling multiple trailers. These giants thunder along the highway, their drivers hardened by isolation. But some truckers tell of being passed, or nearly run off the road, by phantom road trains. These spectral vehicles roar past in a blast of wind and dust, yet when the driver checks their mirrors, there is nothing. No lights, no sound, no vehicle on the horizon. In 2003, a trucker named Mick Holloway reported such an encounter to local authorities after narrowly avoiding a crash. I saw the lights in my mirrors big as day. Figured another road train was tailing me. Then it pulls up alongside. I feel the whole cab rock from the wind. But the trailers, God, the trailers looked wrong. Twisted like they were bent in the middle. I blinked and it was gone. Dead quiet. I pulled over, shaking so bad I couldn't drive for half an hour. Police dismissed it as fatigue. But Mick never drove the air at night again. The Nullarbor Plain has its own version of the classic ghost light phenomenon, known as the Min Min lights. Aboriginal legend describes them as spirits of the dead, appearing as floating orbs of glowing light that follow travelers through the desert. On the air highway, drivers report seeing bright hovering lights that dart across the road or trail vehicles for miles. They are often described as intelligent, reacting to movements, speeding up when chased, slowing when pursued. One traveler, Sarah Collins, described her family's 2008 encounter. We were driving at dusk, kids asleep in the back. Suddenly, this bright white light appeared behind us, too low to be a car. It followed us for at least 20 minutes, no matter how fast we went. My husband pulled over and the light just hovered, maybe 50 meters back. Then it rose straight into the sky and vanished. The kids slept through it, thank God, but I still see it every time I close my eyes. Not all stories from the air highway are folklore. The road has a dark history of real disappearances. In 1988, British backpacker Peter Falconio vanished along the Stewart Highway, not far from the Nullarbor, in a case that shocked Australia. But even before and after that, dozens of travelers have gone missing along the air. Their cars later found abandoned on the shoulder. Some were eventually discovered in the desert, overcome by heat or disorientation. Others were never found at all. The vastness of the Nullarbor swallows evidence. A broken-down car, a wrong turn, and the desert claims its own. But many locals believe not all disappearances are accidents. Some whisper of predators, human, and otherwise, that stalk the highway's endless stretches. One of the strangest cases comes from a pair of truckers traveling eastbound in 1979. They swore they saw a convoy of 3 cars pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking. When they slowed to check if help was needed, the cars flickered, like mirages, and vanished. Both men described the same detail. One of the cars had an old license plate design, no longer in use. Investigators chalked it up to fatigue and heat waves, but the men insisted what they saw was no trick of the desert. To the Murning people, traditional custodians of the Nullarbor, the land itself carries spirits. The endless plain is said to be a realm where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur. To travel it without respect, they warn, is to invite the attention of wandering souls. Even seasoned truckers describe a heaviness on the air highway. Radios cut out, headlights dim, and silence takes on a physical weight. More than one driver has pulled over, unable to continue, convinced the road itself was watching them. Those who survive the air highway often say the scariest part isn't what they saw, but what they didn't. One traveler, alone in a small sedan, described pulling over to rest around midnight. She turned off her engine, opened the door, and was struck by the total silence. No insects, no wind, no sound at all. She said it felt like stepping into a vacuum, as if the world had paused. She lasted 10 minutes before panic drove her back onto the highway. The horror of the air highway lies in its paradox. It is both impossibly empty and terrifyingly alive. Drivers face hallucinations, ghostly figures, phantom vehicles, and unexplained lights. Some return home shaken, others never return at all. What is certain is that the Nullarbor Plain holds its secrets close. For every documented account, dozens more go unreported, whispered only among truckers at roadhouses or between locals after dark. To cross the air highway is to face isolation at its most absolute. The line between exhaustion and the supernatural blurs until they are indistinguishable. Perhaps that's the most chilling part. Out there, in the desert night, you cannot trust your senses, and so the stories endure of the hitchhiker who vanishes, the road train that dissolves into dust, the lights that follow you no matter how fast you drive. Because once you set your wheels upon the air highway, the road doesn't just test your endurance, it tests your sanity. Highway 2, Alaska, the haunted road through the wilderness in the northern reaches of Alaska, where endless wilderness swallows the horizon and the winters stretch longer than memory, lies a stretch of asphalt known as Highway 2. On maps, it appears as a simple route connecting towns and military bases. In reality, it is one of the most unnerving highways in the United States. Locals call it the road that watches. Truckers whisper about figures that vanish when approached. Military personnel stationed nearby share stories of strange lights pacing their convoys. And scattered through police archives are reports of travelers who entered the highway at night and never arrived at their destinations. Highway 2 carves through a landscape both breathtaking and hostile. Mountains loom in the distance, forests crowd the shoulders, and winter storms can appear in moments, blinding even the most seasoned drivers. But beyond the dangers of nature, there are tales that suggest something else lingers here. Something that has haunted this road long before asphalt touched the tundra. Highway 2 follows part of the Alaska Highway, a route built during World War II to connect Alaska to the continental United States for defense purposes. Thousands of workers carved the road through wilderness, enduring brutal conditions and countless accidents. Many died during its construction, their bodies buried in the permafrost. Local lore insists these restless souls never left. Indigenous stories from the region speak of spirits in the trees and lights in the sky that confuse and mislead travelers. Combined with wartime tragedy and decades of fatal accidents, Highway 2 has become a place where legends and reality blur into one, perhaps the most common and most chilling legend along. Highway 2 is that of the vanishing hitchhiker. Truckers describe picking up lone figures along the road, often in brutal weather where survival without shelter would be impossible. The hitchhiker enters the cab, silent or speaking only in fragments. Then, at some point in the journey, the driver glances back and the seat is empty. One trucker, Daniel Foster, recounted his encounter from 1984. It was -20, snow coming down like needles. I see this man walking, no jacket, just a flannel shirt. No way he survives out there, so I stop. He gets in, thanks me real quiet, says he's heading north. I drive maybe 15 minutes trying to make small talk, but he doesn't say much. Then I check the mirror, and he's gone. Door never opened, no sound. Just me and the snow again. I pulled over shaking, walked around the truck with a flashlight. No footprints in the snow except mine. That's when I knew he wasn't alive. Daniel swore never to pick up another traveler on Highway 2 again. Highway 2 also carries stories of mysterious lights that appear in the night sky. Unlike the northern lights that paint Alaska in shimmering greens and blues, these are described as small, intense orbs, white, red, or amber, that move with deliberate intent. Military convoys in the 1960s reported being tracked by these lights. Some described them keeping perfect pace with trucks for miles before vanishing into the forest. Others swore the lights descended low over the road, bathing the vehicles in a glow that silenced radios and drained headlights. A soldier stationed at Fort Wainwright in 1972 wrote in his journal, driving south on Highway 2, "We were shadowed by 3 lights. They moved like no aircraft we knew, too fast, too low, silent. We stopped the convoy, but the lights hovered above the tree line, then shot straight upward and disappeared. We told the officers it was exhaustion, but none of us slept that night." Even today, residents report these lights, often dismissed as optical illusions or military experiments. But for those who've seen them, the fear is unmistakable. Disappearing vehicles police logs along Highway 2 include reports of vehicles seen stranded on the roadside, hazards blinking only to vanish when officers arrive. In one 1995 case, a caller reported a small blue sedan parked near mile 229. When troopers reached the location 20 minutes later, there was nothing. No tracks in the snow, no tire marks, no evidence the car had ever been there. Local legends connect these sightings to accidents from decades earlier, when vehicles slid off the icy road and their occupants perished. Some say these are residual hauntings, moments replaying endlessly in the Alaskan wilderness. Among the many ghostly tales, one stands out: the woman in white who haunts a stretch near the Tanana River. Motorists describe seeing a pale figure standing on the roadside, her dress fluttering in a wind that doesn't exist. Those who stop find nothing but snow. Those who continue sometimes report her suddenly appearing in the back seat, visible only in the rearview mirror. One chilling report came from a man in 2004. "I saw her on the shoulder, thought she was stranded. I slowed down, but something in my gut told me not to stop. I passed her, and for a second I caught her reflection in my mirror. She was inside the car, sitting right behind me. I slammed the brakes, turned around, and the seat was empty. I drove the rest of the way with my eyes fixed on the road, too scared to look again." Like many haunted highways, Highway 2 is defined not just by what people see, but by what they feel. Travelers speak of a crushing silence that descends suddenly, even over the roar of engines. Radios cut out, headlights dim, and for moments the road feels like a vacuum, pulling life out of everything around it. Hunters from nearby villages tell of hearing footsteps behind them in the snow, though no tracks appear. Some refuse to travel Highway 2 at night at all, citing ancestral warnings of spirits that lure the living into the woods. Highway 2 has its share of real tragedies. In 1990, a young couple vanished while driving south from Fairbanks. Their car was later found abandoned, doors locked, gas tank half full. Despite extensive searches, no trace of them was ever discovered. Locals say their spirits now linger on the road, appearing as fleeting silhouettes in headlights. The pattern repeats across decades, Abandoned cars, missing travelers, no closure. In a land as vast as Alaska, the wilderness often swallows evidence. But the consistency of these vanishings feeds the belief that Highway 2 is more than just dangerous terrain. It is cursed. Those who've driven Highway 2 alone at night describe an unnerving sensation. The feeling of being watched. The trees seem to press closer. Shadows shift unnaturally, and headlights catch eyes in the forest that are gone the moment you focus on them. Truckers share stories at roadhouses, voices low, eyes darting. Many admit they'd rather risk fatigue than pull over to rest, fearing what might approach their cab if they stop. The legend of Highway 2 persists because it embodies the terror of isolation. In Alaska's endless wilderness, help is hours away, and the cold itself is deadly. Add in ghostly hitchhikers, unexplained lights, and disappearances without answers, and the road becomes something far more terrifying than mere geography. It becomes a liminal place, a boundary between the living and the dead, between reality and nightmare. Highway 2 continues to claim lives through accidents, exposure, and disappearances. But ask anyone who has driven it after midnight, and they will tell you, the dangers are not just physical. Perhaps next time you find yourself on that lonely Alaskan road. Route 375, Nevada, the extraterrestrial highway. There is a stretch of two-lane asphalt in the Nevada desert that carries a name as strange as its reputation. State Route 375, the extraterrestrial highway. On maps, it runs quietly for about 98 miles, cutting through barren valleys and mountain ridges between the towns of Crystal Springs and Warm Springs. But in the minds of travelers, it has become something far more sinister, a place where the ordinary rules of reality break down. Locals warn visitors not to linger after dark. Truckers crossing at night speak of unmarked black SUVs tailing them, of aircraft that move without sound, and of lights that hover above the desert only to vanish in a blink. The road lies near Area 51, the most famous and most secretive military installation in America, and where secrecy and desert silence converge. Fear has a way of multiplying. Route 375 winds through the Nevada Test and Training Range, a vast expanse of restricted airspace where experimental aircraft have flown since the Cold War. The isolation is absolute. Once you leave the small outpost of Crystal Springs, you face miles of nothing but dust, jagged mountains, and sky. At night, the silence is crushing. Travelers describe pulling over, stepping out of their vehicles, and realizing the desert has no sound at all. No insects, no wind, no birds. Just a void. Many say it feels like the land itself is listening. It is in this silence that stories begin. One of the most enduring tales along Route 375 involves strange lights that dance in the sky. Unlike distant stars or even aircraft, these lights move erratically, zigzagging, darting from horizon to horizon in seconds, or hovering silently above the highway. Witnesses often describe a sensation of time distortion, as though minutes slip away unnoticed during the encounter. In 1996, two college students driving from Las Vegas to Reno reported being followed by a glowing orb that matched their speed for nearly 40 miles. They described it shifting from white to red to blue, hovering over the road so low they thought it would touch the roof of their car. Then, without warning, it shot straight upward into the night sky, leaving them trembling and disoriented. When they reached the next gas station, both realized their watches were exactly 45 minutes behind. Route 375 runs close to the border of Area 51, and with that proximity comes another legend, the mysterious black SUVs that appear without warning. Travelers recount being tailed for miles by unmarked vehicles, often with dark windows, headlights dimmed, only to watch them vanish as suddenly as they appeared. Some insist the SUVs are government patrols monitoring anyone who dares travel too close to restricted zones. Others whisper they are not driven by humans at all. One trucker named Elijah Hayes told of a 2001 encounter. "I saw headlights behind me, thought nothing of it. But they stayed on my bumper for 30 miles, no matter how fast I went. Finally, I pulled over. SUV stops too, maybe 50 feet back. No one gets out, just sits there. I grab my flashlight, step out, and when I turn around, gone. Not driving away, not turning off their lights, just gone. The desert was empty. One of the most terrifying phenomena on Route 375 is missing time. Drivers speak of setting out on a stretch of road they know well, only to arrive at their destination hours later than expected. Their fuel gauges don't match the distance traveled, their watches conflict with clocks in town, and yet their memories are blank. In 1982, a man named Tom Delgado reported leaving Alamo, Nevada, at 10:30 p.m. to drive the highway to Warm Springs. The trip should have taken under 2 hours. He arrived just after dawn. His last memory was passing a cattle guard around 11 p.m. After that, nothing. Doctors found no head injuries, no alcohol or drugs in his system. Yet Tom swore he had lost 6 hours of his life to the desert. He never drove Route 375 again. Alongside UFO encounters, travelers tell of seeing figures on the roadside, human-shaped, but not entirely human. These shadowy beings appear in the periphery of headlights, tall and thin, sometimes with reflective eyes. Drivers who slow down often report the figures vanish into the desert. Others insist they've seen them reappear further down the road, as though stalking the vehicle. One chilling account from 2014 involved a couple traveling at dusk. They saw 3 figures standing in the sagebrush, motionless, watching their car. As they passed, the figures turned their heads in unison. When the couple looked in their rearview mirror, the figures were standing in the middle of the road, though no sound of footsteps reached them. The people who live near Route 375 know its reputation. Small diners and motels sell alien merchandise, and UFO tourism has become an industry. But behind the laughter and novelty there is unease. Locals warn against camping near the highway, and some refuse to drive it after dark altogether. Many connect the phenomena to Area 51, where decades of rumors suggest alien technology, or even alien beings are studied. Skeptics argue the lights are experimental aircraft. Believers say the sheer strangeness of the encounters goes beyond human invention. Testimony: the couple who vanished, one of the most haunting cases tied to Route 375, occurred in 1993, when a young couple driving from Reno to Las Vegas disappeared. Archer Avenue, Illinois, the Phantom of Resurrection. Mary, there are many haunted roads in America, but few rival the eerie legend of Archer Avenue in Justice, Illinois. Stretching through woods, cemeteries, and desolate bends, this road has been the stage for one of the most enduring ghost stories in the nation. For nearly a century, drivers, police officers, and pedestrians have reported encountering the same spectral figure, a beautiful young woman in a white dress, known as Resurrection Mary. Her story is not a simple folktale whispered in bars. It is a collection of police logs, taxi driver testimonies, and shaken locals who all claim to have seen her. Over time, Resurrection Mary has become a symbol of Archer Avenue itself, the phantom who walks its midnight pavement and vanishes at the gates of the cemetery that bears her name. The legend begins in the 1930s. According to local lore, Mary was a young woman who attended a dance at the O. Henry Ballroom just off Archer Avenue. After a quarrel with her date, she decided to walk home through the bitter cold of a Chicago winter. Tragically, she never made it. Struck and killed by a passing car, her body was laid to rest in Resurrection Cemetery. Not long after her burial, drivers on Archer Avenue began to report something uncanny. A pale, blonde-haired girl in a white dress hitchhiking near the ballroom, asking for a ride home. Witnesses claimed she spoke little, only gave directions down Archer Avenue, and then, without warning, vanished from the passenger seat as the car passed Resurrection Cemetery. Perhaps the most chilling encounters involved taxi drivers, hardened men accustomed to working late hours. Many had no patience for ghost stories until they picked up Mary. One widely circulated case occurred in the late 1930s. A cab driver picked up a young woman near the ballroom. She was quiet, her skin unusually cold to the touch. As they drove, she instructed him to stop at the cemetery gates. When the driver turned to collect the fare, the passenger seat was empty. The shaken man drove straight to the police station, insisting he had not imagined it. His story was nearly identical to dozens of others that would follow over the decades. In 1976, Resurrection, Mary's legend took on a physical dimension. A driver reported seeing a young woman trapped inside the cemetery, gripping the bars of the iron gates. When authorities arrived, they found something disturbing. The imprint of 2 small hands burned into the metal. as though molten heat had seared them into place. The gates were quickly removed and repaired, but not before photographs of the handprints circulated in local newspapers. Many argued it was vandalism or a prank. Others swore it was Mary herself, still reaching from beyond the grave for freedom. Archer Avenue is no ordinary road. Its landscape lends itself to ghost stories. Thick groves of oak trees, lonely bends, and a string of cemeteries, Resurrection, St. James Sag, and Bethania. The road has long been associated with spectral sightings, phantom monks, strange lights, and even reports of glowing orbs drifting between the gravestones. But it is Mary who dominates the lore. She is not seen every night, nor even every year, but when she does appear, the encounters are strikingly consistent. A woman in her late teens or early 20s wearing a white gown, sometimes clutching dancing shoes in her hand. The police have long been reluctant to comment on Resurrection Mary, but some officers have spoken anonymously. One retired patrolman admitted that Archer Avenue received numerous calls in the 1970s and 1980s about a young woman running into traffic, only for responding officers to find nothing. Skeptics argue the sightings are cases of mistaken identity, drunken revelers from the ballroom, pranksters in costume, or hallucinations caused by exhaustion on a lonely road. Yet the sheer number of witnesses, many of whom had no prior knowledge of the legend, gives pause, even to doubters. The O. Henry Ballroom, later renamed the Willowbrook Ballroom, remained central to Mary's story. Again and again, reports placed her outside its doors, asking strangers for rides. One well-known account came from a man named Jerry Pallas, who swore he danced with Mary inside the ballroom in the late 1930s. He described her as quiet, beautiful, and strangely cold to the touch. After their dance, she asked for a ride home, but when they neared Resurrection Cemetery, she vanished from the car. For years, Jerry told his story without wavering. Friends mocked him, but he insisted until his death that he had touched the ghost of Mary with his own hands. Even in recent decades, reports of Resurrection Mary have not ceased. In the early 2000s, several drivers claimed to have nearly struck a young woman darting into the road, only to find no one there. Security guards at nearby cemeteries have reported fleeting glimpses of a woman in white moving between gravestones, always out of reach, always gone when pursued. Rideshare drivers in the 2010s occasionally posted chilling accounts online, describing passengers who entered their cars, gave vague directions, and then disappeared without opening a door. Though skeptics dismiss these as internet hoaxes, they echo nearly a century of consistent storytelling. Why does Resurrection Mary endure when so many ghost stories fade? Perhaps it is the tragic familiarity of her tale. She is not a demon or monster, but a young woman whose life was cut short, doomed to wander the road where she died. There is something deeply unsettling about her ghost. She does Archer Avenue, the Phantom of Resurrection. Mary, the city of Chicago, is built on stories. Its skyline glitters with modern power, but beneath the neon lights and busy highways lies a history steeped in tragedy, crime, and restless spirits. Among all the haunted locations tied to this city, none is as infamous as Archer Avenue, a winding stretch of road just southwest of downtown that has, for nearly a century, carried the legend of Resurrection Mary, a phantom hitchhiker said to haunt the route near Resurrection Cemetery. Archer Avenue itself is not an isolated highway like the barren roads of the Southwest. Instead, it cuts through suburban neighborhoods, forest preserves, and stretches of farmland. Yet, despite being minutes away from civilization, this road has always carried an eerie reputation. In the 1920s and 1930s, Archer Avenue was a dark, poorly lit route connecting dance halls, taverns, and the large Catholic cemeteries that sprawled across Chicago's southwest side. For young people of the era, it was a nightlife corridor. For others, it was a dangerous, lonely road where shadows seemed to linger longer than they should. At the heart of the legend is Resurrection Cemetery, one of the largest burial grounds in Illinois. Rows of marble tombs and towering statues sit behind wrought iron gates, the final resting place of thousands. And from this cemetery comes the story of a young woman doomed to forever wander Archer Avenue. The legend of Resurrection Mary first took shape in the 1930s. The most common version of the story tells of a young, Polish-American woman in her late teens or early 20s. She was said to have gone out one night to a dance hall along Archer Avenue. Some versions place her at the Willowbrook Ballroom. After a quarrel with her date, or simply deciding to head home early, she began walking alone along the dark road. Somewhere along the way, tragedy struck. Whether she was hit by a passing vehicle, attacked by a stranger, or simply collapsed in the cold remains uncertain. But her body was later buried in Resurrection Cemetery. Soon after, motorists began reporting strange encounters. A beautiful young blonde woman in a pale dress seen walking Archer Avenue at night, trying to flag down rides. One of the most chilling and enduring accounts dates to the winter of 1939, from a man named Jerry Pallas. Jerry told newspapers and police that he had met a young woman at a dance hall in Chicago. She was quiet, polite. Said her name was Mary. We danced most of the night. I even bought her a drink. As the night ended, Jerry offered to drive her home. She accepted, and together they headed down Archer Avenue. But halfway through the drive, Mary asked him to stop. She said she lived nearby and asked to be let out by the cemetery gates. I thought it was strange. It was freezing out and there were no houses in sight. But I didn't want to press her. Mary thanked him, stepped out of the car, and walked toward the locked gates of Resurrection Cemetery. Jerry watched in confusion. And then, before his eyes, she simply vanished. The next day, Jerry visited the home of the girl he thought he had danced with. But when he described her to the family, they grew pale. Their daughter Mary had died years earlier. Since that night, reports of Resurrection Mary have continued into modern times. Taxi drivers, truckers, and ordinary motorists describe the same sequence. A young woman with blonde hair and a white or pale blue dress appears on the side of Archer Avenue. She waves for a ride, often climbing into the back seat of a cab or passenger seat of a car. She is polite, quiet, sometimes asking to be taken further down the road. Near Resurrection Cemetery, she always asks to be let out. She then vanishes, sometimes into the cemetery gates, sometimes directly from the seat she occupies. One cab driver in the 1970s reported a chilling encounter to a local newspaper. She got in the back. Didn't say much, just gave me an address down Archer. As we passed the cemetery, she shouted for me to stop. Before I could hit the brakes, I looked in the mirror and the back seat was empty. I swear she was there one moment, gone the next. Perhaps the most infamous physical evidence tied to Resurrection Mary appeared in 1976. That year, a driver passing Resurrection Cemetery reported seeing a young woman trapped behind the locked iron gates, clutching the bars and crying for help. When police arrived, they found no woman, but they did find something inexplicable. Two of the iron bars of the cemetery gate were bent apart, and in the iron itself were imprints resembling small, scorched handprints. The Archdiocese. Shades of Death Road, New Jersey. The road of blood and shadows. Few roads in America carry a name as ominous as Shades of Death Road. Located in Warren County, New Jersey, this 7-mile stretch of winding asphalt cuts through forest, swamp, and forgotten farmland. The name itself feels like a warning, a grim marker of what waits for anyone who drives it after dark. Unlike many haunted highways whose reputations are built on folklore, Shades of Death has a long history of real violence. Murders, lynchings, accidents, and inexplicable tragedies have all been tied to this lonely road. For locals, the name is not a legend. It is a reflection of truth. The name Shades of Death is not an invention of ghost hunters or thrill-seeking teenagers. It dates back centuries, to a time when the road was little more than a dirt path cutting through New Jersey wilderness. Historians argue over its origin. Some say it comes from violent feuds and murders that plagued the area in the 19th century, when travelers and settlers alike turned on one another. Others believe it was inspired by the malarial swamps nearby, where disease and death were rampant, killing entire families in the summer heat. But one thing is certain: long before cars, people whispered that the road carried a curse. The most terrifying part of Shades of Death is not just the ghosts, it's the blood-stained history. In the early 1900s, a series of killings gave the road its grim reputation. One tale tells of a man who was bludgeoned to death with a rock during a robbery, his body dumped along the roadside. Another story speaks of a woman murdered by bandits, her blood staining the earth for days. Perhaps the most infamous case is that of a farmer who murdered his wife in a fit of rage, burying her shallowly in the soil near the road. Locals say her ghost still walks, a pale figure drifting through the trees, searching for justice, even into the 1920s and 1930s. Newspapers recorded multiple violent deaths along shades of death, cementing its reputation as cursed ground. Long before European settlers arrived, the Lenape Native Americans considered the land around shades of death spiritually charged. Legends claim that a great battle was fought nearby, and the earth itself soaked up the blood of the fallen. The spirits of the dead, restless and angry, were said to linger, haunting the woods. Some believe the road inherited its curse from this history, that every act of violence committed here only feeds the cycle of darkness. The phantom figures modern travelers report that driving shades of death at night is a surreal experience. The road is winding, narrow, and often shrouded in mist. The thick woods press in from both sides, creating an oppressive tunnel of blackness. It is here that countless drivers have seen phantom figures, dark silhouettes crossing the road before vanishing into trees. A woman in white standing at the roadside, glaring with hollow eyes. A pair of glowing eyes staring from the woods, too high to belong to an animal. Some describe a sudden drop in temperature, others a suffocating silence that makes even the hum of the car engine seem unnatural. At the southern end of Shades of Death lies Ghost Lake, a body of water with a reputation as grim as the road itself. Formed artificially in the early 20th century, it quickly became associated with strange phenomena. Locals say that in the early morning, mist rises unnaturally from the water, forming shapes that look like human figures. Others claim that at night, if you stare into the still surface of the lake, you will not see your own reflection, but the face of someone long dead. Near the lake once stood an old cabin known as the Fairy Hole Cave, believed to have been used by Native Americans for spiritual ceremonies. Travelers reported strange chanting near the site, though no one was ever there. One of the most unsettling mysteries tied to Shades of Death surfaced in the 1990s. Visitors reported finding hundreds of Polaroid photographs scattered in the woods near the road. Many depicted women in distress, bound, gagged, or appearing unconscious. Police investigated, but the photos mysteriously vanished before they could be fully catalogued. To this day, no one knows if they were part of an art project, a cruel hoax, or evidence of something far darker. Locals remain convinced the Polaroids were real, and that they hint at crimes never uncovered. One of the most frequently reported phenomena on Shades of Death is the sound of children laughing or crying. Drivers who pull over near Ghost Lake or the swamp say they sometimes hear giggles carried on the wind, or the sound of small feet running through leaves. Yet when they search, the woods are empty. In one account, a young couple claimed they stopped by the roadside late at night. While sitting in their car, they heard the unmistakable sound of a child tapping on the back window. When they turned, nothing was there. Some locals believe these are the spirits of children who died during the malaria outbreaks of the 1800s, forever tied to the land. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Shades of Death is its atmosphere. Even in daylight, shadows cling unnaturally to the road. The canopy of trees blocks out the sun, creating pockets of dim light where the air feels stale and heavy. At night, the road seems to stretch endlessly, as though time itself slows down. Drivers often report feeling that they are being watched from the woods, their headlights reflecting off unseen eyes. Some say they feel compelled to drive faster, as if something is chasing them. There are even accounts of cars stalling without explanation, their engines refusing to turn over until the driver nearly breaks down in panic. And always, as the car roars back to life, there is a sense of something unseen moving just out of sight. Unlike many haunted roads where stories fade over time, Shades of Death has only grown darker with each passing decade. Its history of real murders and mysterious disappearances has left scars that no folklore could invent. The paranormal encounters, ghostly figures, eerie laughter, reflections in the lake are layered on top of that truth, creating one of the most terrifying reputations of any road in the United States. Today, thrill seekers still drive Shades of Death at night, daring one another to stop at Ghost Lake, to look into the water, or to wander the roadside woods. Some return shaken and pale, swearing they will never go back. Others never speak of what they saw. The locals of Warren County give the same advice to outsiders who come searching for thrills. The road earned its name for a reason. If you value your peace of mind, do not drive Shades of Death Road after dark. U.S. Route 29, Virginia, the highway of vanished women. There are haunted roads where phantoms wander and cursed roads where folklore lingers. But few highways carry the real-world horror of U.S. Route 29 in Virginia. Stretching from Maryland through the Carolinas, Route 29 is a major artery of American travel. Yet along its Virginia stretch, a shadow hangs heavy. Over the last several decades, the highway has become infamous for a chilling pattern. Young women disappearing, only to be found murdered, or never found at all. The legend of Route 29 is not born of superstition. It is etched into police reports, newspaper headlines, and the grief of families who will never have answers. To this day, locals whisper that Route 29 is cursed, and many women refuse to drive it alone after dark. The terror began in the 1990s, when a series of women vanished along Route 29 and its surrounding roads. One of the most notorious cases was Alicia Showalter Reynolds, a 25-year-old who disappeared in March 1996 while driving to Charlottesville. Witnesses reported seeing her pulled over on the side of the road after being flagged down by a man in a dark pickup truck. Her car was found abandoned, but Alicia was gone. Months later, her body was discovered in a wooded area miles away. The killer was never caught. Her case marked the beginning of what some call the Route 29 stalker, a predator, or perhaps predators who used the lonely highway to hunt. Throughout the 1990s, more women went missing or were murdered along the Route 29 corridor. Police began noticing similarities. Victims were often young women traveling alone. Their cars were found abandoned or broken down. Some had been approached by a man offering help. Dozens of reports surfaced of a man impersonating law enforcement, pulling women over or flashing his headlights to force them to stop. Many who escaped later described their terror at realizing something wasn't right. While police investigated, fear spread like wildfire. The highway had become a hunting ground. Years later, in 2012, another chilling case added to Route 29's bloody history. Sage Smith, a 19-year-old from Charlottesville, vanished after leaving her apartment to meet a friend. Though not directly tied to the earlier killings, her disappearance reinforced the feeling that the region carried a dark curse. Her case remains unsolved, her family still searching for answers, but Route 29's darkness is not only human, it has taken on the aura of the paranormal. Drivers report seeing phantom hitchhikers, young women standing by the roadside waving for help. When drivers slow down, the figures vanish into the mist. Others describe looking into the rearview mirror and seeing a woman sitting in their back seat, only for her to dissolve into smoke when they turn around. These tales, whether born of imagination or something darker, mirror the real tragedies of women who were stranded and never made it home. The line between ghost story and grim reality has blurred completely on Route 29. Virginia authorities have long investigated the Route 29 disappearances, but with limited success. Though some suspects were identified over the years, no single killer was ever convicted of the majority of cases. For locals, the lack of closure has only fueled the road's legend. Each unsolved disappearance becomes another layer of dread. Even today, many residents say that when driving Route 29 at night, they keep their windows rolled up, their eyes on the mirrors, and their speed steady, never stopping for strangers, never trusting the shadows. Route 29 cuts through a haunting landscape. Rolling hills give way to dense woods, and long stretches of road vanish into dark horizon lines. Gas stations and rest stops are few and far between, leaving travelers isolated for miles at a time. Those who drive it at night describe the silence as oppressive, broken only by the drone of tires on asphalt. The headlights barely seem to pierce the blackness, and every bend in the road feels like an ambush waiting to happen. It is not difficult to imagine how a lone traveler, stranded or approached by a stranger, might feel a chill crawl down their spine. Witnesses who claim paranormal encounters describe a consistent sensation, being watched. One trucker told of seeing a figure dart across the road late at night. Slamming his brakes, he expected impact, but nothing was there. When he climbed out with a flashlight, he saw fresh footprints in the dirt leading toward the tree line. They stopped abruptly, as though the figure had vanished into thin air. Another woman reported that while driving alone at 2 a.m., she felt compelled to look in her rearview mirror, only to see a pale face staring back from the back seat. She swerved off the road in terror. When she stopped, the car was empty. For decades now, Route 29 has held its grim reputation as a corridor of fear. Some of its horrors can be traced to human monsters, predators who stalked the lonely highway. Others are harder to explain. The apparitions, the vanishing figures, the whispers of women's voices carried on the wind. Together, they form a tapestry of dread that makes Route 29 one of the most chilling highways in America. For travelers passing through Virginia, the advice is simple and sobering. Do not pick up hitchhikers. Do not stop for strangers. And if you must drive Route 29 at night, keep your eyes on the road and pray you make it to the other side.